Okay, I think we did it. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. It's still morning somewhere. Hawaii. It's in Bora Bora and French Polynesia. It's still morning. So that counts.
Probably is.
Yeah. But for you, it's definitely not. It's later in the evening, so I appreciate you taking the time. Hi. Good afternoon, good evening.
Hi, Josh. Good to see you.
It's been a long time. Too long, man. Too long.
Yeah.
What do you look? The reason we have. Oh, wait, hold on. You know what I just realized? Remember, I just told you about why I have a blue screen and
Yeah.
But so okay. This is this pair of glasses is UV coated. No, it's like it protects your eyes from the radiation of monitors and all that, right? Mm-hmm. So I've got it blue coated because it protects against the blue rays or whatever, right?
Okay.
But guess what's also very difficult to mask out during a blue screen when you got a blue screen?
Blue glasses?
Yeah, exactly. So that I can have this conversation and have a chance of maybe better, right?
Yeah. So, okay. Oh, so you have a different pair. Okay, that's interesting.
Yep, I keep two pairs. It's not cheap to get. American healthcare is it's not cheap. So anyway, the things I do for radio. And this is a podcast. I don't care. Nobody cares. But I'm so glad you're here. Yeah, it's been too long. I guess I'm not going to see you in a couple of weeks' time, huh?
No spring one for me this year.
Well, in that case, maybe we can spoil what you would have talked about. Were you there?
Yeah, I think there are people over there talking about that. Cora is going to be there talking about Modulith stuff and architecture, and I think she's pairing up with Glenn on this kind of stuff. So Glenn
Renfro, my favorite people in the world.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely like the best people you can get over there. So,
speaking of some of the best people, guess we just got this nice message from. She's also
Mary. I totally remember. It's just that I haven't met Mary a bit longer than I haven't met you, Josh. So it's Spring 2018. Which one was that? Was it Washington or something?
I remember Austin was 2019 because that was the last one before the virus. Was it Vegas? Did we do Vegas in 2018? Because it was like Vegas for a number of years there, right? It was pivotal platform, Spring One platform. Yeah, DC. She says. Oh, so it was Washington. Yeah, your memory's better than mine. Okay.
Well, I was just blindly guessing. I wasn't really remembering anything. But
well, anyway, good to see you, Mary. She's been on the show as well.
Definitely.
Yep. Okay. So before we get too far away, I know who you are. I'm pretty sure everybody knows who you are. But do you want to explain who you are so that I don't butcher it?
Yeah, sometimes I don't know myself either. But that aside, I think I'm like pretty known for the work on data that I started or co-started with Pollack and primarily Pollack back in 2000. Oh boy, when was it? 2010 or something. And there's been a team built around the data projects that are now led by Mark Paluch, Christoph Strobel, and Jens Schauder. And a couple of years ago, I moved on into like more architecture related work, which the data stuff always had been to some degree, right? Because we're like implementing domain-driven design concepts like repositories, but it's kind of elevated from that. And so I started to work on the Spring Modulith thing in 2017, I think, were the first commits as this kind of submarine project, as we call it. I'm not sure that it has a translation into English really, but in Germany we say it's a submarine project, something that you do on your side where you kind of like R&Ding a bit, and then I think we turned it into
Skunks Works. I don't know why. It's a weird word, I realized.
And I think we turned it into a Spring project in 2023, I think. I'm not sure. Or was it 22? I don't know. But yeah, that's kind of been the work of the last years, basically.
Okay. Two threads. One is an experimental laboratory department of a company or institution, typically smaller than an independent of its main research division. Is that Skunkworks for you? Does that mean the same thing, roughly? You would say I've got a Skunkworks project.
Kind of, yeah. That roughly hits it. That's fine.
Okay, that's part one. Part two is, Modulith when you started working on it, and you had the molecule stuff, and like I remember all that, but really your fascination with good clean architecture, I think, predates that by a decade at least, right? I mean, in terms of what you're working on the side.
Yeah, I mean, it even predates the work, my time at Spring Source. So even before that, I've worked at companies and always been like interested in it's like how do you structure applications so that they stay maintainable and what have you. And then a lot of the work I do currently is kind of revolving around those topics, whether it's like the core Spring Modulith thing or the, as you mentioned, JMolecules projects. But they all kind of breathe the same spirit of, hey, we want to build maintainable applications because we need to evolve those, right? So that's kind of the idea.
And you've got the coffee shop, the Spring Hypermedia, Spring HideOS.
The RestBucks thing, you mean? Yeah. That was like from the days when I coined Spring HideOS, basically pulled that out of a couple of customer projects. And then I read the book by Jim Weber, Ian Robinson, and
Rest in Practice.
Yeah, the Rest in Practice one. Yeah. And then I thought, okay, why not build something? There's a lot of hypermedia stuff in there, and the examples in there are, I think, are they .NET or are they plain Java? I don't know, but we're not based on Spring. So I thought, okay, just build something based on Spring to showcase that kind of technology, and then it kind of evolved into this. Basically, it's kind of my pet clinic, like closer to a production application thing that showcases a lot of the hypermedia stuff, the architectural stuff, the native builds, and these kind of things. Basically, all the hot topics.
And that domain was sorry, what?
No, I was just like basically finishing off the thought.
Oh,
it's okay.
That example was inspired by Gregor Hoppe and Bobby Wolf's Enterprise Integration Patterns book, right? The
I'm not sure whether that's the case. I always thought that Ian and Jim, they were just looking for something that's kind of a bit of a state machine-ish kind of thing. So you have a tiny bit of state and in a domain that everyone understands, and is at the same time is simple enough to not become like too unwired. I think the connection you're making is Hope's article that Starbucks is not using two-phase commit. That's exactly. That's a different thing, but it's also, again, like, I mean, and of course there's coffee and Java. I mean,
well, but what I loved about it is that example says that the state gets perpetuated via the inferred events in a messaging system, right? You pass a cup from the till, the register, to the barista station, to the frappuccino station, and then as the cup moves around, that's the message. It carries the state with it, and then you've come along and you've said, okay, well, the state is in the message on the web too, right? The state leads with each response, and then here we are now. A year ago, with your endless indulgence and patience and kindness, contributed a little bit of Spring integration support, Spring messaging support to Spring Modulith. Full circle, baby. Here we go.
Yeah, we're all back it's all related to each other, right? So it's like connections are everywhere, I guess.
Yeah. So Spring RestBucks is like I think that's, honestly, I look at that more often these days than I do the Pet Clinic. I mean, the Pet Clinic was very important for Spring Framework 1.0 and that earlier few generations. But in terms of the applied architecture of the modern web, the RestBucks that's for me. That's where I spend my time. Well done there.
Yeah, I guess what I'm looking for in examples is that basically reading data and presenting data is one side of the story, but having these kind of state transitions, like moving in order from one state into another, and then basically having conditional state transitions. So when are they allowed? When are you allowed to cancel something? That's kind of where the interesting questions start, because usually such state transitions trigger state transitions in other parts of the system in real-world applications. Like you complete an order, then you need to update the inventory and whatnot. And this is where the interesting and more complicated bits come into play. And I think Pet Clinic on purpose is not that deep on like domain, domain state transitions, maybe because it was intended to showcase how you would write to a controller in the first place. I mean, it didn't even start with the simple form controller thing back in the days, and JDBC template and whatnot. And as far as I know, there's still like a lot of forks of it out there that basically just take the thing and translate it into a different technology. So it's more of a particular technology showcase in each of the forks than it is in how you maybe arrange interacting business functionality, right? So that's kind of it's a different kind of thing, and it's tremendously popular and it's helpful. It's just that it's not the best example for like anything that's kind of slightly more complex and is a bit more like targeted towards architectural thinking, maybe, which, as I said, doesn't make. Go ahead.
Is it fair to say that the Pet Clinic shows how to pull together the various pieces of Spring, whereas RestBucks shows how to pull together architecture in terms of Spring?
Well, I guess in the Pet Clinic, the domain is more a vehicle to showcase a particular set of technology, whereas with RestBucks in particular, it's always been the domain kind of driving certain things, or driving technology choice, particular technology choice. So you're not going to find a RestBucks fork that's trying to do the same thing that I do there with, let's say, an open API spec or what have you, because it's just not. It's deliberately built to or the technologies selected are kind of selected to showcase the connection to a certain kind of architectural trait, right? Like being able to change the API without having to recompile clients, or just like structuring the applications into different application modules to keep them independent, to make sure one of the modules can be extracted easily, and all these kind of things. So it's more that than a sole technology showcase, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. I think if I had said what I was trying to say better, I would have said something like what you just said, but I didn't. So thank you for clarifying.
Oh boy, I'm just trying to summarize my thoughts because, yeah.
I love it.
Anyway,
so all that to say, I've been following your stuff on architecture for years now, years and years and years, and you've got this project that I use every day. It's called Spring Modulith. I do it. I show it in all my demos. I love it. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I would never start a new Spring Boot project today without Spring Modulith. It just feels like these are the like more so than Ruby on Rails, actually. Like more than anything I can think of, this is keeping your architecture on the rails, right? You do Spring Modulith, run those tests, and you'll get feedback. You'll end up with a code base that has naturally, you'll have aggregates and you'll have domain-driven design. Just sort of even if you just do things that make the errors go away, your code will look like something that was out of the domain-driven design book, even if you didn't notice. That's what I discovered. Even if you don't know the book, I know the book, but just because I spend all my time avoiding this coupling, you end up moving into this sort of you naturally rediscover CQRS by using Spring Modulith. You naturally rediscover all these wonderful patterns, and they just fit nicely together. So I'm a huge fan. Spring Modulith 1.1. That's what we got today, right? Or is it
1.4?
1.4. Brother, I don't know. It's all start.spring.io for me. But
yeah, sure. You just get what you grab what you get from there, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I 2.0 is coming. That's huge, right? And like what do we? Oh, well, look at that. Wait. Okay, hold on. Yes. Starting the project. Just don't start Spring Boot without Modulith. I'm not even kidding. It's you'll thank me later, because and when I say later, I mean like 10 years from now, right? The code will be scalable. You can just start. Just do it. Trust me, it'll be fine. Let's see. We have to get back to this question in a minute.
Oh boy.
Okay, we gotta get
That's
back.
a haunting question.
Look at the time. I gotta go, right? Like that kind of thing.
Yeah, sure.
No. So 2.0 is coming. I don't know how it could get better. What's planned for 2.0?
So there's like a piece in Spring Modulith that's kind of or maybe I started the other way around. When Eric wrote his domain-driven design book, he has these two big parts in strategic design and tactical design, right? And he said that you can use like one versus the other, but you only get the full effect if you basically combine the approaches. And there's a similar story with Modulith. Like you mentioned the architectural guidance and verification aspects that Modulith ships with, right? Or gives to developers. So you basically go ahead, you discuss your domain, design your domain, and then what Modulith allows you to do is basically implement those modules, those logical elements of your application in code, and then helps you finding out whether you accidentally introduced a violation of that arrangement, right? So that's kind of the basics and the fundamental things. And by the way, IntelliJ is going to ship or has already shipped in its preview versions a lot of support for that kind of verification right within the IDE. So we've been working with the JetBrains team to basically bring that support into your IDE and not necessarily having to run the tests every time you change something. It's still helpful if you run those tests in CI, right? But you get immediate feedback in your IDE.
I've got one test. I mean, I should run all my tests all the time, but I've got that one test, the application modules.of and then am.verify and then
verify. Yeah. I mean
I got that one running all the time. I've got that test in a hot switch.
It's pretty easy and it's pretty easy to set up. So, but it's kind of like if you're just like developing your production code and you immediately get feedback about, oh, you're referencing a bean that you shouldn't actually be able to, or that you shouldn't reference at all, then that's kind of helpful without necessarily having to run the test. So what that means is that you can basically lay out your code in a structure that's a directed acyclic graph, which means there's no cycles. In other words, there's a certain kind of control that you have about like when you change one part of the system, that this doesn't necessarily ripple through all of your system, but only up the graph, basically. So that's kind of nice. You have a structural, let's say, coherence, and that's all nice and well. The problem, or an interesting aspect of that, is that you still have to have these modules to communicate with each other, right? So, and in a Spring application, this is usually achieved through like dependency injection, right? You reference a Spring bean, and then you call that method on that other bean, like in a microservices arrangement you would do with like an HTTP call to a foreign service or what have you. The thing is that this, if you do that on a services level, like Spring services, there's usually transactions associated with that.
Yeah.
And if you, let's say, call another bean, which then calls another bean, which then calls another bean, you end up with a like not similar, but kind of similar problem as you would do if you had microservices interacting that way, right? You basically, in microservices, you accumulate a lot of latency, but even in a monolith, you would go ahead and basically increase the transactional boundary of that very first call across the other modules, right? So you basically create the runtime arrangement is still quite coupled, right? So you have a structurally organized arrangement of your code base, but at runtime, your code interactions are still like or the code interacts in a way that you get these large transaction boundaries and that kind of stuff. So one thing that we recommend to resolve that problem is, again, similar as in a microservices arrangement, is to use events to communicate basically implement the interaction. So instead of like actively calling something, a module or a use case in a module would basically signal that I've created or completed that order, and then another module, the inventory, would basically react to that, right?
Right.
This is nice, and it also eases the testability of that application, because you can now carve out a single module to run as a test without having to bootstrap all the other downstream dependencies, right? Because you don't need the beans to be instantiated, because you don't need to call them, but instead you just publish the event. Long story short, to support that environment, we have a bit of infrastructure in Spring Modulith, the so-called event publication registry, that makes sure that events, you can publish events in a way that they only get published if the original transaction commits, right? So it's kind of a delay in there, and then only if the order really has been committed and written to the database, we inform, let's say, the inventory to perform the update eventually, right?
Right.
The problem with that is, again, same as if you're using a messaging infrastructure, there's eventual consistency involved, right? Because now the inventory is basically performing its update behind the actual transaction. It also includes the risk of that failing, and then we've kind of lost the notion of the original event. And the event publication registry is kind of that log that basically keeps track of, oh, we need to update the inventory, we need to send out an email, we need to whatever else, right? And then only if the tangential functionality is executed complete in a successful way, we scratch off that item of the log and basically say, okay, the inventory has been successfully updated, but the email sent out failed because our SMTP server wasn't really working,
Right.
or what have you. And then we have the ability to resubmit the event publication, so we can. It's not really a retry; it's kind of something different, especially with Spring Retry. But we can resubmit the event and then basically try to send out the email again. I don't know. And we've had that. It's been like a long story here, but we've had that for since 1.0, and that event publication registry. It was just that, like, with the kind of knowledge that we had about the way that people deal with these kinds of scenarios, we basically shipped something that was as simple as possible, and we explicitly excluded certain use cases in that area. For example, like, how do we best resubmit event publications in a multi-instance application scenario, right? So because if you, let's say you have your application and you deploy multiple instances of that, then the resubmission is usually something that you would do in a I don't know, scheduled way. Like every 5 minutes you try to resubmit these events, but then you have to sort of select one instance that actually does that, and you don't want to have like all the instances like trying to resubmit at the same time.
Right, because it's easy to say that everything should be idempotent, but that's not.
Yeah, kind of. Also, the number, like if you have like a lot of failed events, let's say failed event publications, and you want to resubmit them, then the question becomes like, do you really want to resubmit the 100,000 events at the very same time, or do you want to basically kind of
stagger them or something,
slowly walk through them and resubmit them like every 20 at a batch or what have you? So all these limitations, like we gathered feedback. I mean, there was a way to actually implement that, but it required a lot of, additional work by developers, right? They need to use distributed locking mechanism, write a bit of code, and then basically to perform these resubmissions. And that's kind of the core thing that we're revamping for 2.0. So there's like the release that we shipped, the first milestone of 2.0. It's, I think, 1 week ago or 2 weeks ago, kind of that time frame. That shipped a first prototype that's already that's implemented that kind of improvement for the for JDBC, for the relational world, basically. And there's already like, I mean, there's like, of course, tests that make sure that it works the new way that we kind of want it to work. And there's also been like feedback from the community. Today, it was my first day back from PTO, but I fixed a couple of bugs that were reported in the meantime. And yeah, it kind of solves a couple of challenges that we had quite nicely. So one of them being, you don't need a distributed locking mechanism actually anymore for the resubmission. There's been a lot of help from the data team, especially Jens from the JDBC, who's maintaining the Spring Data JDBC module, was pretty helpful in like thinking about the state model that we have there and being able to select and resubmit events so that like multiple instances can try that concurrently, and just the one that's kind of winning to some degree, updating to a new state, is then actually performing the resubmission. So that's kind of that resolved into bliss with if you have the right people around you.
How do you? Is it? Are you like assigning the events to a particular node or something? Like what?
No, it's like it's basically it's just different states. So we there's like one thing is that we differentiate between. I mean, it's all within the JVM, right? All the event handling is within a single JVM, so there's no message broker involved whatsoever. When the event is published, it's now in this. We keep track of the state explicitly. That's something we didn't do before. So the event listener that's immediately invoked by the same JVM then updates the thing immediately to processing, right? It's a new state of processing. And then what we also didn't do before is that when that listener throws an exception, we explicitly set an event to the state of failed, which also allows us to differentiate between the events that are still in process versus the ones that have failed. It was something we didn't have before.
Oh, so now if I have two nodes that start up or they both have a @cron scheduled loop to resubmit it, so they're not going to get the ones that are in processing state because they're processing. So
that's like one thing, right? Previously, you had to kind of apply like certain heuristics, saying, okay, I know that event publications that are older than 5 minutes, they're probably failed, right? Mm-hmm. And then you basically processed everything older than 5 minutes. That's something that you don't do anymore with the 2.0 thing. You only process explicitly failed events. The trick with the multiple application instances is that when we process these failed events, what we do is there's an additional state resubmitted that we basically just, let's say we capture we read the first 10 failed events, and then we perform an update of that event publication into the state of resubmitted. And when you have concurrent application instances, you might read the very same 10 events,
right.
but the update will only succeed for one of the nodes, and only if the update count, or we basically just take the events that for which the update actually succeeded and process that, right? So it's kind of like it's just like concurrent data access basically, and based on the on databases,
like an optimistic lock kind of thing, right? Where you're saying
kind of right.
Where processing is
I'm trying to here. I am the instance. I want to resubmit that event, so I'm trying to update it to the state of resubmitted. And if I'm successful with that, then I basically handle it. And if I'm not, then I know that concurrently some other instance has actually treated that event. That's kind of the thing.
But so you do that update immediately upon claiming the message, the event, but not before actually processing it, right?
Exactly. So that's kind of it's a two-step process, right? So we claim the event by saying it's resubmitted, and only if we can claim the thing, then we send it to the in-memory event handler, which then immediately sets it to processing, and then we're good. The other thing that we're kind of doing with that is. Of course, you can have, let's say, machines or instances come down that have just published the event but not started processing them, or someone might have just pulled the plug on a machine that was just processing event publications, right? Then you have these publications stuck in the processing state, in the published state, or even in the resubmitted state. That could be the case as well. So there's an additional process or additional task running in these applications now that for which you can basically configure the staleness. So let's say an event publication that's stuck in published for 10 seconds or for 20 seconds is considered failed will then be moved over into the failed state and then is subject for resubmission later on. So like all these intermediate states that an event could be stuck in has basically this kind of staleness monitor being applied to, so that you end up at some point with all of these failing or being completed. So they kind of, the states of the event publications kind of, they converge into either failed or either completed successfully. That's kind of the thing. And all of that is kind of is
same
in the
application modules.
Excuse me?
Same approach though, right? The same code, application module listener, all that stuff.
The API wise, like for the actual event and structural setup in the application, nothing changes. There's a bit new API on the resubmission side, because you can now you can explicitly get access to the failed events, and then there's a bit of criteria on top of it to basically select the ones that you want. The staleness monitor is basically configuration, and we've currently built the because we have to support a couple of like different data store implementations: JDBC, JPA, Mongo, Neo4j. I think that's it.
Oh, is that all?
But we started with the relational word only, and I managed to get it designed in a way that you can actually even upgrade to Spring Modulith 2.0 and still work with the old event publication data schema, basically. So you can kind of work with the old registry. That's kind of what it looks like to the developer. So if you let's say use MongoDB, and we don't have an implementation for MongoDB yet, but you can upgrade to Spring Modulith 2.0 and still continue to work with the same data structure that you've worked before. So you don't actually have to kind of make use of the new registry. So you can benefit from the upgrade to Boot 4 and Framework 7 and all of these things. So we wanted to kind of be as lenient as possible for everyone to upgrade there. The plan still, of course, is to ship the module, the MongoDB and Neo4j implementations for the other data stores at some point.
That's super good. When you do, okay, so if I'm thinking about the state machine here, when you call the event handler for a message, that's wrapped in a transaction, right? The application module listener method. Yeah.
Yep.
What if you do something that takes a long time? Like, what's this? Do we have a? How do I don't want to keep a transaction open because that's a connection tied up, right? So I want to like.
I mean,
look back around and mark it as completed.
So add application module listener is the go-to annotation if you want to integrate, let's say, aggregate updates in certain modules and you want to combine them in an eventually consistent way, right? So we're kind of assuming that this other work that's attached to the original transaction is going to be transactional as well. So that's kind of the thing. For one, you can simply if you don't want that, let's say you send out an email, so you're not actually talking to a database, but you need to send out an email or talk to a message broker or what have you, then you don't need that transaction on the attached functionality side. Then you can either simply, there's an attribute on the annotation to disable the transaction. That's fine. The event publication registry would still do its work, and basically before the listener is called, it would basically update to processing, and afterwards try catch this thing and then either set it to failed or to completed, right? But you wouldn't block a transaction for the time of the execution of the actual listener. Or you could go ahead and just put add async, add transactional event listener, like the individual annotations that add application module listener is comprised of on the method. So that's kind of a matter of taste. But I think the add application module listener is a certain certain signal. If you just look at the code, right, that you kind of know, okay, this is an eventually consistent way of attaching functionality to an original transaction, and then setting the attribute would just basically signal what you want here. And we're actually making use of that ourselves in the event externalization capabilities for the message brokers. So we're disabling the transaction for that as well.
Right. And that's another thing that I kind of wonder about is if you do add externalized and you publish to some, it leaves the JVM's space, right? Context. What if that fails, or how do you even know? Is there some way to like resubmit that?
I mean, yeah, there is what we do here is like we also register an event listener basically to capture the event, and then we use the broker, the Spring specific broker APIs like Spring for Apache Kafka or Spring AMQP or what have you, to send out that message to the broker, and all those APIs have means to get an error signal, quote unquote, to speak in reactive terms. It's you either get an exception being thrown, or you for Kafka, I think you get a completable future, in which we then hook into the on exception path to mark the
delivery
the externalization has failed, right? So we can still attach to the execution of the sending out. So only if the broker, I mean, you still have the case that you sent out the message and successfully maybe, and then the machine dies, and then you fail to mark the event publication as completed locally, right? But that would then be a use case for the message in the status of processing being considered stale at some point, right?
Okay.
And then you would basically flip it to failed by the staleness monitor, and then basically resubmit the message at some point, right? I mean, we cannot solve the exactly once delivery problem at all, but we can make sure that you have at least once delivery in this case, right? So, and I guess because we're sending the message or the event, the publication ID as message identifier, the broker might just like deduplicate in its infrastructure anyway. So that's kind of the.
Is there a way for an asynchronous pipeline? Let's say you send a message to Kafka, and then from Spring Modulith's perspective, it's left the nest, it's fine, right? Everything's okay. But then something happens, and 5 minutes later there's an error in the processing pipeline, and so you really want that message to be redelivered from Spring Modulith. Is there a way to like send a message back into Modulith and say, hey, I've got this publication ID, it actually ended up failing, please mark it as retry or whatever?
There's nothing in Spring Modulith as of today, and these kinds of discussion, that it's kind of something that's coming up in the community also quite often. I just recently had a comment on Reddit that someone doesn't really get why you're not just using Spring integration, right, for these kinds of things. Because I would argue that if you're explicitly targeting these kinds of application to application interactions, then Spring integration and Spring Cloud are the projects that you want to look into and also pull into your project if you really want to be specific about that kind of interaction, right? If the plumbing of applications is your domain, quote unquote, then these are the go-to projects. So really trying to make sure that when we're doing the thing that we want to do from a single applications perspective, but at the same time, like event externalization is kind of this gray area already, right? So we just provide give us some information about which events are supposed to go where, and then we send them. There's no like fine-grained control about like channels and gateways and what have you. If you want that, then Spring integration is your best friend, and you can even, thanks to your contribution, Josh, you can actually just combine the two by think you just need to put in the jar file the Spring Modulith messaging jar, and then you would get the event published into a Spring integration channel from which you can then use all of the facilities that you have there to further configure mappings and what needs to go where. But we're trying to have a pretty good kind of balance between what we want to put in Modulith and what should actually be done with the other projects that are targeted in that area.
Like I said, I would start with Spring Boot and Spring Modulith, and when I truly need to like scale out processing, or I want to do something, or I have to do something, there's some other service with which I need to connect, then use the externalization. But I imagine that would be the 10% or 20% case, and then Modulith is the 80% case, right? Like I'm gonna have
sure.
one service. It's such a nice experience. I love your project. Love it.
Thanks, Josh.
No, I mean really, thank you. It's changed the way I write Spring apps. It is actually, I use it all the time. I'm not kidding. I have software of my own that I've like rebuilt on top of it. I'm just a huge fan, and that's not just a Excel short joke. That's a enormous fan, you know.
Nice.
Okay, so Spring Modulith 2.0, that's coming. Obviously, it's for people who don't, I mean, we've gotten into the weeds here, but it's a project that helps you keep your architecture in such a way as to promote the scalability of the code base. And I like to think about it as the teams working on it, you know, the people working on it will have more natural sort of swim lanes as a result of this. I have a fly in my room. We don't have flies where I live. I mean, how did this fly even get here? I know they fly, but still, there's no open windows, and also we're 12 floors up off the ground. So ask me how that fly got here. I don't know. Maybe it took the elevator. I don't know. But anyway, this project super useful because it just gives you this incredible experience. But it also, the reason I love it is, like you say, it integrates with externalization. So Spring for Kafka, Spring for RabbitMQ, Spring integration. It has observability support. One of my favorite features is the visibility into what's happening and to see your architecture drawn out for you like that. It has integration with all the different data stores. You worked on, co-founder of Spring Data in effect. So of course it's going to be a very good citizen there. It's just this universe. It's this project that pulls in the rest of the Spring ecosystem, and huge.
Yeah, I mean, especially like Spring Boot and all of the ability to auto configure stuff, right? You just quote unquote, you just pull in some jars, and you kind of get this toolkit for, here's my domain. I lay it out in code, and then it's kind of kept evolvable with as minimum additional effort as possible, right? And then you can basically take it from there. If you think about it in Neil Ford's architectural fitness function kind of thing, that's kind of what it is, right? The other thing, ArcUnit, under the covers that we use is a very, very important piece for us, because you can also think of Modulith as a convention-based ArcUnit test, architectural test, basically, right? That we then basically tweaked in a way that you can customize it through some annotations or configuration APIs and make it work for you. So,
So good. When's it coming out? Spring Boot 4 comes out in November, probably around Thanksgiving, which is the third Thursday or fourth Thursday, third Thursday usually. So
yeah, I mean, we've shipped the first milestone last week. There's going to be a second one in 2 weeks. I lost a bit of time because of that PTO, but I hope to get the MongoDB implementation done, because it's kind of cookie cutter thing.
Yeah.
We have to replicate, just calling the same similar queries with a different data store. And we're following Boot hot on the heels. Like every time there's a Boot release on Thursday, I try to get out a Modulith release on Friday, and it usually works quite well. So whenever you follow the Boot releases, there's going to be one just shortly after. Modulith. There's a couple of like other tiny things that we're looking into, actuators for the event publications. That's something that we're currently drafting, and that I intend to ship with 2.0 as well. So there's a bit of community involvement going on right now. We've shipped sonar graph integration. So if you're using like more advanced architectural design tools, they shipped integration for Spring Modulith with their latest release. And I'm looking forward to the IntelliJ stuff coming.
So you have this. That's the important bit right there. Is that in the IDE, in your build, in your pipeline feedback loop? That helps you.
Yeah, definitely.
It's almost as ubiquitous now as the compiler, right? There's no way to avoid this valuable feedback that Modulith gives you.
Yeah. I mean, there's especially there's like this kind of tangential thing of this JMolecules project.
Yeah.
But it's all about kind of elevating kind of the way you think about your project from, if you think about it like a plain Java or even Spring project in your IDE, what you see or what you get presented is still, here's a Java project, here's source main Java, here's a package of a certain name, and within those we have, or in these packages we have source files, right? When the way you discuss software design or software architecture is, oh, these are my logical components of my application. And then if you're into DDD, you talk about aggregates and repositories. If you're into hexagonal architecture, you talk about ports and adapters. And there's a bit of ongoing research work that I do with Martin Lippert from the Spring Tools team, and also with the IntelliJ folks, about presenting the project in exactly that way, right? So then you don't have source main Java and packages and whatnot, but then you have your Spring Boot applications. Top level is modules, and underneath these modules you have ports and adapters and these kinds of things, right? So look at the project in the way that you actually talk about the project, or that you kind of think about your project. That's kind of stuff that we've done a bit of prototype work already, and the idea team already has this kind of, there's a bit of a spark of that already in their logical structure view. Yeah. That's like the first glimpse of that. Martin is experimenting with similar things in Eclipse, and I'm looking forward to get even more of that into the IDEs, so that you basically, you just have to commit to, I mean, you commit with Modulith, you commit to the vertex slice architecture, and then you usually select one of these technical decomposition approaches, whether it's onion, hex, or what have you. And because you express that in the code base, so what you do with Modulith and JMolecules, then the IDE can actually find that information and present the project back to you and allow you to navigate components and adapters and what have you. So I hope we can kind of get to a certain level, or a different level of abstraction when we talk, not only talking but also interacting with code. That would be the overall goal, I guess.
It's the future is bright. Speaking of, one last thing. Boot 4, Spring Framework 7, they bring in nullability. Is there a story for Modulith?
That's already done. That's kind of like, it's like, I thought, what I think this story is an important one. Because of like end user applications usually not interfering or not interacting with, like, when do you call a Spring API from your actual application code? Right? It's that's even more of a smell, isn't it?
Well, except for application event publisher. That's the only one.
Sure. That kind of stuff, definitely. Like, I mean, JDBC template, I mean, I can see its usefulness, but the usefulness is primarily for us internally as a team, right? So that when I call I found out I call a Spring Kafka API and throw in some null which I shouldn't have, right, at some point. So for me, detecting these potential bugs, that's kind of interesting. But it's not as kind of like a giant thing to the end users, especially for the Modulith APIs, because you're not really interacting with its APIs in most of your production code. That's kind of
it's a nice thing about Spring Boot is we can just the surface area for a new project can be just a few things that you inject, and that's it.
Yeah.
You're done. You know, some annotations. You're amazing, absolutely amazing. One of my all-time favorite projects. I am super excited about Spring Modulith 2.0. People should go get the bits, try the new milestones out, and I'll be watching, of course, this space to see when the new features are coming out. I mean, we've got only a few short months.
I'm gonna keep you posted, Josh, if you want or not.
Okay. And then people are going to Spring 1. Definitely check out Glenn and Cora, or Cora and Glenn. Cora's done some amazing talks on Modulith.
Sure.
She's like the best. You know, she's a I every time I watch her speak, I learn something. You know, or two things, whatever. Okay, thank you. You're on the internet, right? Or do you want to be found? If so, where do you want people to find you?
It's actually O Drotbohm, like my O and then my last name. Anywhere you can find me: GitHub, Blue Sky, Mastodon,
LinkedIn.
Anywhere. Sure.
It's
as well.
Is
it? I don't know. I occasionally post and announce releases and a couple of new features, but yeah, I mean, just Drotbohm is not that ubiquitous, so it's
nice
very easy to spot, I guess.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Have a nice evening. Going well until 11 o'clock now for you, so I appreciate you taking the time. Thanks everybody for joining us. Bye.
Take care. Bye.